Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gonna teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Phil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Mike Washington still on assignment. I don't believe he's overseas, but I'm not sure what type of assignment on. So when he gets back, y'all certainly need to make sure you ask Professor. I don't know if this is another one of these study abroad that he somehow finds a way to get to South Africa beaches or the Ghana beaches, Jamaican beaches, Bahama beach. I don't know how he has this luxury, but somehow he ends up on the beach with these pictures that we see. So I didn't mean to tell his business, but I'm just saying. With that being said, we have clinical Professor Drew in the building, holding up for Mike Washington, pinch hitting as we talk about baseball and softball. The salute, if you would. With that being said, welcome to episode 260 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, the show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports, from institutions large and small. From NAIA to the NCAA, we share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, and the clinical professor, A.D. Drew. We are filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to KCOA's 12:30 a.m. studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, multi-Hall of Famer, I should say, Ralph Cooper in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. Today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG Agency, LLC. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational consulting and data analytics. With that being said, I'm going to jump in there and start it off. But before I do that, I will make sure I ask Charles Bishop, how you doing today?
Doing well, Doc. Getting ready to get into it. A lot of great action. As we talked about the other night, still some races going on the baseball side. So looking forward to some exciting baseball action this weekend.
No doubt about it. With that, A.D. Drew, how you doing today?
You know, I got one thing on my mind, Dr. Cavil. That's the Tyson Foods Black College World Series, my brother. Been trying to track the teams that will be playing next week. Got one upset of a team already in their conference tournament there, Doc.
Oh, yes. Tell us about the upset before I get into my opening statement.
Yeah, just checking the SIAC tournament, and it appears that Albany State went down today to Morehouse, and I believe that was a score of 5-3, Dr. Cavil. So Albany State gonna have to come out the losers bracket in order to make it to the championship game. Other scores from the SIAC tournament, and I'm just going to focus on the teams that will be playing in the Tyson Foods Black College World Series. Number 4, Miles defeated number 5, Kentucky State by a score of 8-4. So because of weather, they moved the losers bracket games up to today. So currently right now, Tuskegee and Kentucky State are battling. Also, Albany State and Clark are battling. You know, that's being held at Albany State. So they could be going home on the first day of a tournament in which they are the host institution for.
Two in barbecue is not good. 2 in barbecue is not good in softball, baseball, especially when you're the home team, because it's not good for the conference. because the money will be lacking in terms of attendance.
Yeah.
When you have your two fans come out there, but I will say this: to put yourself in a position where you're at the top of the conferences, there are any team, Savannah State, Albany State, to name two, that probably have the arms to take an early loss and find a way to fight back. You got to believe it's got to be Albany State, Savannah State. But you're talking about putting yourself in a hole early. We'll see what this means as you talk about. As we move on to this, we had the opportunity to have exclusive interview with MEAC Commissioner Sonia Steele the day after, which she mentioned on the show, and it actually produced it on Wednesday. It was May the 4th yesterday. You had the MEAC presidents and chancellor's statement of commitment. As the intercollegiate athletic landscape continues to shift, the 8 presidents and chancellors from the member institutions that make up the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference are reaffirming our commitment to the historic conference and asserting our intentions to continue to build the league. An Elite 8, which we've heard as a coined term that they use of the MEAC, starting with Commissioner Sonia Steele. The collection of these historically Black institutions to forge a bright future in which we educate and prepare the next generation of leaders and professionals. The second paragraph, I won't read everything. I'm sure by now people have read it. It said, with the storied legacy, prominent universities whose academic, athletics, and campus cultures have opened the door for access and opportunity for the ambitious and aspiring student and student athletes, the MEAC Elite 8 are poised to strengthen the conference's position as one of the preeminent conferences in Division I. You had a couple of quotes from those involved in the conference, including the president, Dr. Wayne A.I. Frederick. He was quoted as saying, Howard University has been a proud member of the MEAC for over 50 years, end quote, where we are doing everything we can do to enhance the national visibility of our program and to be the best in class institution in the league. Our sole focus is to ensure our student athletes are prepared to compete at a high level and win championships in their respective sports in the MEAC, end quote. So it's interesting that you did get the statement from Howard. This is coming off an interview where Commissioner MEAC, Sonia Steele, talked about the commitment and talked about some strategies. But I wanted to get from you all, now you had a day to step away from it. You heard and read, I'm sure, the statement of commitment. Starting with you, Charles, what are your thoughts in terms of the MEAC at this time?
Well, I think it was huge for Commissioner Steele to come on and reaffirm the commitment of the member institutions to the MEAC. That was huge. And for the statement to come out a day afterwards and basically say that the MEAC is on strong financial footing. That is the thing that really stood out within the statement. It is not a dying conference as many have predicted, and we will see what their strategic plans are going forward, because Commissioner Steele, she did mention that they do have some things that they are working on. So I'm looking forward to seeing where the conference goes in terms of forging those corporate sponsorships and things of that nature to continue to grow. And is expansion on the table. So we'll see what happens with regards to the MEAC. But for those member institutions to reaffirm their commitment, huge.
Yes, with that said, clinical professor Drew, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's good. I'm just wondering what took so long. Were there negotiations in the back where people just like, okay, we're gonna let this die, then we'll put this out? That's the only thing I was wondering. What took so long to get this statement from Howard and the MEAC? Was Howard seriously considering it, and then they had to have a conversation? Just like hey, friends go through stuff. You go through it with your job, and sometimes you have to have those type of conversations with people. What are those conversations that were had, and that maybe that's why it took almost a month for a affirmation statement to come. Maybe they were flirting with it. Who knows? But I am happy that it has come out. I just hope that this is the statement that we can put this baby to bed and turn out the lights and go to sleep and not worry about it again.
I like the way you said that. Turn out the light. Well, I can tell you this. This ain't going to be the last of it, because right after the statement, right after the interview, people are already finding ways to say, hey, no, this is not it. So it's not going to bed. But I will say this, having the opportunity to be at a university as a professor, working with the marketing department, working as the chair of the faculty senate, being on the executive cabinet de facto because of that position with various presidents, you can only imagine how many different things come across the university that seems for us on the outside is extremely important. You would never get any work done if every time something came up that you had to make a statement of. So in a lot of times, from a president position, I was even say this as a dean, you know, you see things and you just don't have time to respond because you already know your response is not going to be good enough for the people that are trying to get questions. So you just put in the work. And so I think regardless of whether Howard looked at it, obviously we know for a fact CA, the Colonial, was recruiting them. I think in the appropriate time, they came out when they fit in the conference. They worked and continued to talk. They talked about the fact that they were working on a strategic plan, which people don't realize comes from the chancellors and presidents. Commissioner's responsibility is to set the guardrails, set the framework, and make sure what the presidents and chancellors want to get done from a conference structure is going at. We're so used in a lot of ways, almost like a CEO or something like that, that we think from a conference perspective that what the commissioner says or does is based on what they want to do. That's the furthest from the truth. They are the guardrails in terms of the operation that goes on, and the presidents and chancellors run the ship. And so hopefully people get an idea of that. I did want to bring one more thing up when we're kind of talking about conference, you know, turning alignment, statements, all this kind of stuff. You know, there was something out there that snuck out there, which is outside of directly related to HBCUs, but it's important because a couple of weeks ago, we talked about television rights, media rights. You know, we opened it with exclusionary rights, primary rights, secondary rights, tertiary rights. So I just wanted to give you a glance of what's out there when you understand how to operate your media rights once they become open. It's important for people to understand when you have exclusionary rights, that means the person that signed the contract has those exclusionary rights. That media company that signs your contracts. Now, can you go back to the table and ask them to renegotiate? Possibly. Can you ask them to maybe make some adjustments to the exclusionary phase of it so you can go out and get, you know, secondary rights, which changes the exclusionary in principle to more of a primary rights? Those are things that are done oftentimes behind the scene, but it's important to understand the difference when you're talking about contractual frameworks of a contract. What is responsible for, and the difference between a national deal and a local deal? What's the difference between bylaws that govern the structure and the operational? So I bring that up because the Big 10 is looking at, aims to have new media rights deal worth up to $1 billion in place around Memorial Day. When I say $1 billion, you know, it's going to be the fact that they have been able to break up these media rights in multiple ways to get multiple bidders to create in the marketing component of this, if you will, in capitalism, where you have multiple bidders and even some new bidders outside of traditional over-the-air and cable companies. Now you have these large streaming platforms that were bidding for the piece of that. So it's literally driving up the rate. So it's fascinating to see Kevin Warren, African-American commissioner of a Power 5 conference, the only one, is looking at this. So this would be a record-setting deal. And this is $1 billion per season now.
Wow. Wow.
So, you know,
I want to make sure that's with a B.
Season.
That's with a B.
So I put all that out there to say is that, you know, you want to be careful when you are working with significant companies that are putting money to the table, that you have presidents and chancellors of your conference that are all on the same page, and they allow the person, the commissioner, to do the work that they govern them to do, to make sure they understand the media rights without distraction of folks that really don't understand sports media rights. Let me say that again. Sports media rights in terms of how you frame those media rights. So just kind of wanted to put that on the table and level set a little bit there. What are your thoughts in terms of what this means across the sporting landscape? This is the same time that you see the transformation, Division I committee coming in. You see SEC has expanded with Oklahoma and Texas, so you can only imagine what they're going to ask for in terms of their media rights.
That was my first thought.
I mean, it's going to be right along and it's the base, and so it's going to be amazing. But people don't realize, people think about SEC and they are up there, but actually the Big Ten has had larger payout media rights than the SEC. But obviously that's before you bring in Texas, Oklahoma, it gets a chance to level set. And I want you to answer the question in terms of your thoughts in terms of what does this mean for like the MEAC and the SWAC, one of the few conferences at the FCS level, the first two that started to be able to get their own media rights. And now that people know more understanding of media rights, what does this mean when the end of the ESPN contract in a couple of years, how are they going to be able to take what's going on in the marketplace, the current situation, and maybe leverage that in such a way that they can get significant deals? One of them we already hear possibly with the Byron Allen Media Group out there as just secondary rights. Imagine what that means for your primary rights, or even a mega deal where it allows you to supplement that with tertiary rights. I'll start with you, Drew, in terms of your thoughts, and then I'll allow Professor Bishop to come back and provide his context on that.
I'm still trying to get a grasp.
Well, in fact, let's do this. I want to tease you a little bit. I'm going to set you up real good. Let's take our first break, and we'll be right back after the break and give Professor Bishop and Clinical Professor Drew a chance to frame that answer, how this moves forward in terms of negotiating media rights.
Meet Jessica Moore. Jessica was born to care. She always had your back. Like the time she spotted the neighbor kid, an approaching car, a puddle, and knew there was going to be a situation.
That's my best friend. She don't need no lift, drive her own car.
Miss Hogan's class?
Yeah, it's Atlantis.
Nice. I don't think they had camels in Atlantis.
Really?
Today, she's a teammate at Truist, the bank that starts with care. When you start with care, you get a different kind of bank.
We're all about feeding your family with meat and plant-based protein that's good for the planet, good for you, and just plain good. That's all the protein you need, all on your plate.
Five-star backyards, Yellowwood brand pressure-treated pine. If it doesn't have this yellow tag, you don't want it.
That's right, y'all. The Black College Baseball Championship Series is back. The Black College World Series return May 11th through 15th to a place where so much black history has been made. Montgomery, Alabama, to the home of the Montgomery Biscuit. That's right. Riverwalk Stadium, downtown Montgomery, Alabama. The cries have been heard, and Black College Championships LLC is here to answer the call. No longer will the poll determine our champion, as the top baseball teams from NCAA Division II and NAIA meet on the field for Black College baseball supremacy.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gonna teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill inside HBCU Sports Lab with Professor Bishop, Clinical Professor Drew, and I gave you pause and gave you a chance to think about it. So go ahead and give me your thoughts in terms of what does this mean when you get back into negotiating these media rights moving forward, and what you see is out there and some mega deals as possible. Unheard of, obviously, at the Power 5 level, but in a lot of ways, we're hearing also what could be unheard of the FCS level, particularly with the SWAC.
Well, think about the media markets that the Big Ten is in. You've got Chicago, Detroit. You got that Northeast corridor, even over into the New York market with teams like Rutgers, Maryland, which taps into the DC market. When you think of the traditional media, it kind of makes sense because of the number of people in Big Ten country that they can command a premium dollar just based on the cities in which these institutions and their fan bases in. Then when you take that and add in their alumni, I mean, we're talking 50,000 student institutions over multiple years. So when you add that in, the number of potential eyeballs who may not even live in that region anymore and be able to watch them over the air, but because streaming is the way to go right now, can sit in the luxury of their home and watch them on their 60 or 75 inch or whatever inch TV that you have in your home, you can kind of start to see how you can command certain dollars based upon not only your natural TV market, but your alumni base and your fan base. So it's going to be interesting to see how this will trickle down to the MEAC and the SWAC. The MEAC has bigger traditional TV markets with that DMV area, Norfolk, Howard, all the schools in Baltimore. So they have those bigger markets compared to the ones in the SWAC. But, you know, and you guys can answer this, I'm not how big sure Texas Southern and Prairie View, since you got two of them in Houston, but split in the market, even if they do have good viewership in Houston, because they're going to be splitting that Houston market. So it's interesting. If approached right, it could be good. Definitely not with a B, but multi-M's possible.
Yeah. Charles setting you up for that. As I said, transformation committee coming out. Television is in a different area. You're adding in the streaming factor. What are your thoughts moving forward as you hearing these numbers come out, both in terms of the SWAC, SEC, Big Ten? Where do you think this is going? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Drew used the word that I was going to say. And the $1 million question for me is, what is the trickle down effect in terms of what does it mean for the SWAC? What does it mean for the MEAC? Are both conferences in line for a potential television windfall? What is the value of each conference's brand right now? I mean, we are in what we call this renaissance of watching HBCU sports, HBCU football in particular, on streaming networks and things of that nature. And to me, the brand value is probably at its highest that it's probably ever been. So I'm really excited about what this potentially could mean for both the MEAC and the SWAC. What it could mean for the Celebration Bowl. What are the triggers? Does it cause expansion for either conference into another media market, namely Atlanta, for the Southwestern Athletic Conference, where, you know, it is definitely
within that Athletic Conference.
Or Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. Yeah, definitely a city like that is within the footprint of both conferences. So it's really exciting to see, as Drew used that term, trickle down. See where is this going to go, and that multiple M's that could potentially be there for both conferences.
Can I do a quick follow-up?
Quickly, because I want to make sure we get the other stuff in.
Very quickly. The one thing that's going to be key for the SWAC and MEAC institutions to be able to move the needle when it comes to this are the people in leadership understanding this changing trend and realizing that it's not about how many butts you can put in the seat necessarily. Yeah, we want to see butts in the seat, but those eyeballs, if you want those contracts with the M's, you're going to reach a heck of a lot more people via TV, streaming, and everything else than you can put in a 20,000 seat stadium and create a heck of a lot more revenue that way versus 10, 15, 20,000 butts in the seat.
Yeah, and I think it's not just the presidents and chancellors. I think it's also the athletic directors and the VPs of athletics understanding that framework too and how to find a happy medium. Especially if you're going to get those mega dollars, now you can displace some of those fans for that. We hear that the fandom is dropping down, but if you understand the marketplace, the windfall of what conferences and de facto the member institutions are making are increasing. So there's a connection. People understand that you can move from being in front in the stadium versus still having interest in watching. What does that mean? So that's important. But talking about the Atlanta market, you do have the news that Lynn Dawson from Clark Atlanta University, athletic director, is stepping down. Interesting enough that you talk about potentially looking at the Atlanta market, whether that is Clark Atlanta University. But I also wanted to give a shout out to HBCUGameDay.com, where they break down NFL camp invites and undrafted free agents aren't the same. If you hadn't heard the news, make sure you go check out that article. I think it's important to kind of get a context. What's the difference between contracts, which are more of a priority, and camp invites, which are long shots to make the team in regards to politely bringing somebody in and maybe they can catch a fire, which brings us back to FAMU with Lamb saying that he's coming back to FAMU. I'm sure that clinical professor Drew has a smile on his face with that announcement. Said he just wanted to kind of test the market, which certainly can understand. And I thought the way that FAMU handled it, both fans and everything, was a way to also, with Coach Simmons, obviously re-recruiting players to let you know how important it is always to be recruiting, not just in terms of high school students and freshmen, transfer students, but also your own players currently on the team. So I thought that was big. So with either one of those, I wanted to get in a little bit as we start talking about baseball moving forward. You got the softball tournament coming up. Those matchups will be fascinating. You got a week off before you get in those tournaments. So some of the hot news that's out there. I'm going to go with you, Charles. What's on your plate in terms of what's hot?
Well, let me go to the SWAC Player of the Week. Let's take a look at. We're going to talk about baseball, but the Southwestern Athletic Conference has tabbed Texas Southern's Jordan Martinez and Florida A&M's Ethan Jenkins for SWAC Baseball Weekly Honors for their outstanding performances this past week. Jenkins, huge contributor for Florida A&M's three-game sweep over Mississippi Valley State this past weekend during the series. He hit 4 home runs, had 6 RBIs for the series. He had a batting average of .600 and finished with 5 home runs and 7 RBIs. The pitcher of the week was Martinez. Martinez struck out 7 batters and allowed only 3 hits in 6 innings of work in Texas Southern's win over Arkansas Pine Bluff this past week. So kudos to both of those young men, Jordan Martinez of Texas Southern and Ethan Jenkins from Florida A&M.
Charles, Clinical Professor Drew, what's on your mind? What else you got hot out there that's really got you churning right now?
We gonna call this this gonna be the homer section. You know, your buddy Charles usually is the homer for Jackson State. I'm supposed to be the Tuskegee homer today. First of all,
nice. D2, go there.
Yeah. First of all, I want to start with the other draft. That would be the Canadian Football League draft that had not one but 2 Tuskegee Golden Tigers selected to play ball in Canada, and for the Edmonton Elks in the 5th round, Wesley Appleton, a linebacker, was selected with the 39th pick. And I'm trying to scroll. I saw the other Tuskegee name, and his twin brother, Woody Appleton, will be playing for the Ottawa Red Blacks. And the ironic thing is they were selected back-to-back with the 39th and 40th pick in the Canadian draft.
Well, that's going to be a fun fact years down the road in terms of that.
But I'm not
connection. I'm glad you got that out there. That was pretty good.
I'm not done with Tuskegee. Softball. 6 Golden Tigers named to the all SIAC. 6
The whole
count 'em.
team.
6 and Coach of the Year. 3 of them were individual awards. So shout out to Coach Dietrich Randall. I'll get to a side story about that in just a second. Kendrick Gibbons headlines the all-conference team as the player of the year. Ariana Stoneback was the starting pitcher of the year. Kaylee Rolden was the utility player of the year. I did mention Coach Dietrich Randall in his 3rd year is the coach of the year, leading Tuskegee to its first 25 win season, including, and check this out, Texas Southern, like 18-1 conference record. Other players receiving all conference, like Jada Chadwick, was selected to both the first and the second team. How do you do that?
One the pitcher, one the
first team as a first baseman,
second team
as a utility non-pitcher.
That's cool.
That's good.
And then Nyla Strange and Cecilia Tennessee were first team in their respective positions. When I first was coaching basketball at Tuskegee, Randall was a student assistant when I was a grad assistant. So guess who was roommates on the road when we traveled?
Grad assistant.
Yeah, the grad assistant and the student assistant. So Randall and I were roommates when we were traveling, coaching basketball at Tuskegee. And as you know, he took over for the late Edward Colvin, who tragically passed away 3 years ago during the fall, just before the season. So congratulations to the Golden Tiger ladies.
Man, you got all that in. That's pretty good. Dude. Let me, before we take this break, Lonnie Shaw, what is Coach Dion plan for Mississippi Valley State? Good question. I think it's just to help in terms of generate some revenue to help them in terms of probably most of it is facility. That's really where was some concerns there. So that'd be fascinating. I did want to give a shout out to Karen Griffin that broke the news, at least on here, in regards to Isiah Land coming back to FAMU. Good job getting it out there. Jay Boone, Holly putting up there that information, the Big Ten, shouting out some folks, Michael Lee, Chad Cooper, Belinda Johnson in the house as always. Stephen Gapers giving us some love out there. Michael Knox. Michael Lee says, should the SWAC be prepared to go to court in case the new alignment attempt to hinder their move to FBS, which in turn would affect the conference bottom line for the media rights? I would say that the conference needs to always be prepared to go to court if they feel that things are hindering the growth of the conference. I would say this is probably a little more challenging to go to court in terms of FCS transformation, in terms of FBS, because there is a voice at the table. But I will say this. I checked many of the folks that are involved at the FCS, FBS level, and there is without a doubt the level of respect that Dr. Charles McCullin, the commissioner of the SWAC, brings to the table at that level. So I'm sure that there's some people they reach out to ask, at least get a feeling of how some decisions will affect FCS, particularly maybe the HBCUs in terms of the SWAC. That's where I think that relationship of being in Birmingham with the commissioner, SEC Sankey, means a lot. So just to give you some insight, that I would not be surprised that as things move forward, that there is a thought process of making sure that while the Power Five get what they need and what they believe, which I think personally is just going to be in terms of more autonomy, not in terms of kicking people in and out of the FBS. It's going to be about them being able to make the moves. For example, to just give you one specific thing, currently, like baseball scholarships is 11.7, which I've always thought were odd. But they're not like what you think about football with the 85 scholarships or the 13 in men's basketball and the full allotment of 15 in women's basketball where they're full scholarship. I think you'll see them putting up rules that will allow, like the SEC, to give full scholarships for baseball, maybe giving up twice as many or even 3 times as many. Similar in hockey, that the Big Ten, if you would be able to give more than what is currently regulated for scholarships. I think you're going to see more things of that nature than you are about them trying to separate themselves. And this is the reason, is because of the basketball money. They're not leaving. I know you hear this all the time, and that's just people trying to sell papers for you to talk and chatter and read. They're not leaving the NCAA, particularly not before 2032, because they're not going to leave the multi-billion-dollar basketball tournament money on the table. It's not going to happen. And you can't disrupt that contract without making sure everybody in Division I has the current format about being able to get in that tournament is what seals the deal and sells that tournament. The early round upsets, and when things level off, you tend to have the more blue blood power programs in there. So everybody, in terms of generate revenue, is happy. So don't get it twisted. Make sure that we can level set and tell you what really is going on, and not just out there where you're reading papers and people just putting stuff on Twitter to get your reaction and get you excited. Let it go. Don't do that. This is Dr. Cavil, inside HBCU Sports Lab, with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We'll be right back after this break.
One bite of 100% Angus beef ballpark frank, and you'll say, hello, summer. Oh yeah, it's ballpark season.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Charmin Ultra Soft has so much cushiony softness, it's hard for your family to remember. They can use less.
Sweet pillows of softness.
This is soft.
Holy Charmin. Oh, excuse me. Roll it back, everybody. Sorry.
Charmin Ultra Soft is so cushiony soft, you'll want more, but it's so absorbent, you can use less, so it's always worth it.
Now, what did we learn about using less?
You gotta roll it back, everybody.
We all go, why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
Some carriers will give you just one measly entertainment subscription. One is no fun. With Verizon, there's up to 7 entertainment subscriptions with your unlimited plan. That's 7 times the... 7 times the... No. 7 times the... Music, gaming, Disney Plus, Hulu, ESPN Plus, and more. That's 7 times the entertainment! Because everyone deserves better. And with plans starting at just $35, better costs less than you think.
Here we go, coming back.
This is Dr. Cavil, inside the HBCU Sports Lab, with Professor Bishop, clinical professor Drew. Professor Bishop, I know you wanted to take a moment as we get into the second half of the show and get into some baseball talk. I know you wanted to take a moment and just bring things to people's attention.
Yeah, I did want to bring attention that this month of May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I wanted to especially send prayers to the Southern University family with the tragic death of a young lady who was on the cheerleading squad. And I just wanted to bring attention to that and make sure that we'll put that out there for our viewers, that it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I definitely wanted to send prayers in regards to the Southern University family in regards to the death of this freshman cheerleader. Her name was Orlana Miller. So definitely wanted to pause with regards to that.
Very appropriate. Let's take a moment. With that being said, I think it's appropriate for us, all of us, to understand. Make sure you take care of yourself. Make sure you understand mental health, because it's always challenging to maybe recognize mental health for other folks. But if you can, certainly see what you can do and make sure they get professional help. But just importantly, make sure that you're mindful and taking care of yourself. We know that there's a lot of things out there that can capture your attention and get you going. So I'm glad that you appropriately did that, as we can get lost in everything else and forget what is really important. With that, let's get into the Black College 9 as they release week 6 it is in terms of the Black College 9. We want to give a little update in terms of what's going on. Get your thoughts on that. Let me make sure I get that up here to talk about the Black College 9's updated poll. We'll start with the small division and the large division. You know, as we talk about it, we look at it in terms of mid-major division, major division. But the 6th week was released to yesterday, and just want to get a little bit of talk and see. We'll do the whole top 5. You can get in, of course, obviously, and look at the entire poll on blackcollege9s.com with the top 5 programs going in. Let's do the small division first. You have at number 5, Payne College. Not a lot of changes here, so we'll run through this pretty quick. Florida Memorial University at number 4. At number 3, Western Virginia State University. Number 2 is Savannah State. Number 1 is Albany State. And you already heard the news that the tournament ain't starting out too hot, so might see that change at the top of the poll rankings this week if they can't find a way to turn it around. But let me go to you, Clinical Professor Drew. Tell me, what are your thoughts in terms of the top 5 or some other news that is important out there? I know some record-breaking numbers out there, baby.
Record-breaking numbers. Benedict's Brandon O'Connor set the stolen base record that had been around for over 30 years. He stole his 97th base. He stole 97 bases on the season to break the previous record of 96, which was set in 1987. And when I break that down, that was the end of my freshman year, sophomore year of high school. So that's that's been out back there.
I just knew he was going to say college. Nope.
High school. Here's the thing. He was only caught stealing 8 times on the entire season, guys. He batted over 400. And as many bases as he stole, though, do you realize they had someone else on that team who had 60 steals?
No, did not realize it.
And had 5 people in double digits for the season in steals.
Picking it up, putting it down.
Sounds like the catcher better be ready once they get on base.
Sounds like the 82 Cardinals or the 80 Oakland.
Yeah,
80 Oakland A's
and those guys. Yeah,
or the 80 Oakland A's where they had Ricky Henderson. It's
Ricky
one of those two.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
I want to get your thoughts on this, Charles, and then I'll sneak back into you, Drew, before we move forward in there. Savannah State, obviously, they went 3-0 and had the series win over Albany State, but Albany State somehow 2-2 over the week. They end up number 1. What are your thoughts going on in the top of the poll with the voters?
They can't figure out how to knock down Albany State. Kudos to Albany State. They've had a heck of a season, but like AD mentioned today, they were in trouble today against Morehouse. So we're starting to see some chinks in the armor, but Savannah State's been getting it done. They're right up there at the top of the rankings, 30-10. I think when I last looked at what the Savannah State Tigers were doing, but you know what? That is going to be a fun SIAC tournament, especially when you got some stuff happening early. I wonder, is it a precursor to the SWAC and MEAC tournament? See what happens there.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. With Prairie View being hot going in there, probably as the number 1 seed. You gonna start that already? I see.
This is gonna be fun. This is gonna be fun.
Before we go to the large division, because I'm gonna let you get a chance to retort, Professor Bishop. Don't worry, I'm gonna let you do that. Professor Drew, what's your thoughts? Top 2 before we get into the large division quickly. What are your thoughts in terms of that uniqueness with Savannah State and Albany State getting Albany State number 1 last week, Savannah State, and they won the series, but somehow Albany gets the vote. What's wrong with the voters?
Like, I want to spin this forward. I want to see how the Black College Nines is going to handle the fact that the SIAC champion will not play in the Black College World Series due to conference commitment. And then so you're going to have a Black College World Series champion. And depending on how deep a run the SIC champion makes in Division 2, how are they going to handle who's going to be number 1? I voted the poll. You voted the poll. It's going to be interesting to see how that's going to play out. And this is a real life. This is going to happen. They're going to have to make a decision on this.
I think that's is going to go a long way in terms of this tournament, which is so interesting at SIAC, how it winds out, and then obviously how the Black College World Series ends up in terms. Can somebody really get hot and dominate it, which will switch some voters? If not, it will be interesting to see if you have that kind of split type of national championship, or will they vote differently in terms of the Black College 9? It'll be fascinating to see how that is. With that going on, let me look at the top 5 for the large divisions. We got Grambling State, 3-1 this last week. They jump up 3 spots. They've been playing well of late, 18-21. At number 5, you have Jackson State. Charles is going to get all upset. And I put Grambling in there instead of Jackson State, as they're the team that's really hot. 2-2. They did fall 1 spot, but they're still playing really good baseball, 21-22. And number 4, you have Texas Southern. Now seeming to swing in the bats and getting some good pitching. They're up 2 spots after going 3-0, sweeping last weekend, 21-20. And number 3, you have FAMU. They jumped up 4 spots. They're 3-0, 21-23. They have leveled the ship a little bit and playing pretty solid as well. Number 2, you have Alabama State at 3-1, previously at the 2 spots, so they stayed there, 24-17 for the second consecutive week. You have Prairie View that's 3-1, including the sweep this past weekend. They are 27-18, stacking up wins, getting sweeps. They have not lost a conference series this year.
That's huge.
So playing some good baseball. So it's interesting. But if you look at the top 5, starting with you, Charles, you actually got 3 of the East teams in terms of the top 5 compared to what you did last week, with Grambling falling out all the way down to number 10 versus being number 5 after going just 1-3, losing 2 out of 3 to Southern. That is 1 spot up at number 9. So a lot of more difference in what West is going on in the East. What are your thoughts in terms of top 5 and the mix with all of its swag?
Yeah, all those 3 East teams, this is a pivotal weekend. This is going to be a fun weekend. You got Alabama State going to Tallahassee to take on FAMU. You got Bethune-Cookman coming into Jackson this weekend for a huge 3-game series. So I'm looking forward to seeing, if this weekend is sort of a precursor to the SWAC tournament, to see if the underdog teams, if you will, in either of those series can make some headways and kind of put a wrench in how we kind of think in terms of the favorite going into the SWAC tournament. So it's going to be a fun weekend to get some baseball in. I think a huge one. Grambling coming to Prairie View this weekend as well. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that after this last break because I want to get some of the matchups. I think that is the one to watch, and you kind of snuck that in there, and I like that because you're always thinking ahead. It looks like Charles is ready for the tournament. All this other stuff, yeah, let's get this second half of the season done. It's leveled up. Be good. Let's get to the real action, to the tournament. With that going on, Professor Drew, I did want to ask you, you do have 2 MEAC teams in the top 10. You have Coppin State at 7, Delaware State at 8. You can look at the top 5, or you can look at some of the MEAC. What are your thoughts in terms of the large division poll rankings? Again, you can see the entire top 10, both the small and the large school poll rankings at blackcollege9s.com.
You were really reading my mind, Dr. Cavil. Starting to see a little bit of separation in the MEAC with Coppin State 3 games up on the rest of the competition. Delaware and Maryland tied, and Norfolk pulling up the rear. So with Coppin starting to separate themselves, can Coppin State sneak into the top 5 before their conference tournament, or will they wind up in the top 5, assuming they win the MEAC after all the MEAC, after all the SWAC teams knock each other off in the conference tournament? So Coppin looks like they're on the rise. So let's see how this thing plays out. I think Coppin's going to wind up being in a finish the season number 5, maybe number 4.
Good point. Let's take our last break. We'll be back to tell you about some of these key matchups this weekend in baseball. As you start to calm down, you got 3 weeks left before the regular season in the terms of the divisions is settled. The championship in the MEAC will get it done. Can't say cut down nets, the wrong sport, but you know what I'm saying. They'll find a way to get it done as we get into tournament time. Stick with us. We'll be right back at this break and tell you the game to watch. I think we gave you a little precursor. It's in the Western Division, even though you have 3 teams in the top East. people may have their eyes over in the West to see what happens. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break and talk about it a little more before we close.
At Tyson, we know taste is local. Some like their beef pit smoked, their chicken spiced all the way up, or their pork sweet and saucy. Local flavors, global impact. That's what feeding the world is all about.
This is Brian Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN SportsWrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN SportsWrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
For 5-star backyards, Yellowwood brand pressure-treated pine. If it doesn't have this yellow tag, you don't want it.
The top HBCU programs in the nation come to Montgomery, Alabama's Riverwalk Stadium this May 11th through 14th for the Black College World Series. The best Black college baseball teams in the NCAA Division II and the NAIA will battle for Black baseball's ultimate pride. Games will be streamed live at www.mybcsn.net. Tickets are available now online at www.blackcollegechampionships.com.
Compress the analytic data with your hip-hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Professor Bishop, Professor Drew. We're going to talk about some of these matchups. I'm going to start with you, Professor Drew. Let's stay in the MEAC with baseball. Again, softball is off essentially this week as they prepare with the tournaments starting for the MEAC on Wednesday and on Tuesday with the SWAC. With that, let's stay in the MEAC for baseball. Big matchups coming in on Friday this week. You have Norfolk State and Maryland Eastern Shore, Delaware State and Coppin, top two teams there. Should be interesting to see what's going to shake out. Professor Drew, what's your thoughts on the MEAC this week as they try to crown a champion?
Number one, Coppin State plays coach number 2, Delaware State. This will be an interesting matchup to see if Coppin can continue to distance themselves from the rest of the pack, because obviously with a head-to-head with the team that's directly behind you, either the Delaware sweeps, Delaware takes over the top of the MEAC. If Coppin sweeps, they've made Delaware a non-factor. They still have Maryland Eastern Shore out there. Last point on this, what I find interesting is Norfolk and Maryland Eastern Shore are playing their doubleheader on Friday. As you know, they play 4-game sets. One of those days is a doubleheader, while Coppin and Delaware State is playing their doubleheader on Sunday. Kind of interested with that. You know, it's going to be interesting to see how the arms go with the doubleheader being at the end of the series with Coppin and Delaware State versus at the beginning of the series with Maryland Eastern Shore and Norfolk State.
Good point. Good point. Let's go to the MEAC. Charles, as you go to the go to the SWAC, I think you gave your hint of what you're interested in. Is that the only big matchup for you in terms of some of the games there? As you know, when we look at it, what's big over there in the SWAC in terms of Arkansas at Southern, Valley at Alabama A&M, Alabama State at FAMU, Grambling at Prairie View. You have Alcorn at Texas Southern, and Bethune-Cookman at Jackson. What are your thoughts?
Huge weekend games this weekend. Alabama State at Florida A&M. Going to be paying attention to that. Bethune-Cookman at Jack State. Going to be paying attention to that. But if you want offensive fireworks, Prairie View A&M is where you want to be this weekend. Grambling and Prairie View. You're talking about two of the best hitting teams in the SWAC. Both of them are second, and I believe Prairie View is second in the SWAC, third in the SWAC, I'm sorry, and hitting. Grambling is second in the SWAC, batting .314, Prairie View batting .307. You're talking about Prairie View with the best hitter in the SWAC, Brayden Johnson. He's batting .422, one of the best home run hitters in the SWAC, Cameron Bruford. He has hit 11 home runs on the season. Grambling a whopping 45 home runs that they've hit thus far on the season. I tell you what, the pitchers better be ready this weekend on both sides for Prairie View and Grambling, because I'm expecting offensive fireworks. We both know these teams can put up some serious runs. We've seen Prairie View put up, I believe, 20 plus on Mississippi Valley. Grambling and Jackson State got into an outright slugfest this past week, midweek game where Jackson State was able to come out on top. 20-12, if I'm not mistaken. But I tell you what, it's going to be a fun weekend when you take a look at Grambling and Prairie View. Still a little bit to be decided over there in SWAC West, so it's going to be a fun weekend.
Oh, man, I love it. I love it. I really like the way that you did throw a nod out there to Alabama State and FAMU, Prairie View and Grambling. What's beautiful about this weekend, you got two matchups where you got the top two teams currently sitting in their division going head-to-head. You got Alabama State at 15-4. They took 2 out of 3 against Bethune-Cookman. A couple of close games there, including the last 2. And you got FAMU that had bring out the brooms as they got a sweep last week. But you got 15-4 over 15-6. So this is very intriguing in terms of the top 2 teams. FAMU can make some move here, or Alabama State can start separating itself. And when you talk about the West, you got Prairie View 17-4. Again, they swept this past weekend, as I said. Grambling State lost the last game, losing 2 out of 3 to Southern, but they're still in second place, sitting at 14-7. And you know the seeding is really important in the tournament, so it's interesting to see how they jockey back and forth. And Prairie View would love to put in a little more room in terms of the rest of the league, as they have a chance to really make a major statement against Grambling this weekend. So I like the way you think about this.
And you know, when I take a look at this, the top hitting teams are over there in the SWAC West. Texas Southern batting .315, Grambling .314, Prairie View .307, even Arkansas Pine Bluff over in the SWAC West is .285. The top pitching teams, Alabama State, Bethune-Cookman, Jackson State, Florida A&M. And so the question as we get to the tournament, does good pitching beat good hitting, or vice versa? You know, it always comes down to that. But one of those things that I always take a look at, are you making the easy outs? Top fielding teams in the SWAC, Alabama State, Bethune-Cookman, and Jackson State. So can you get those outs? Can you get out of an inning when you need to get out of an inning?
Before we leave, give us some updates over there in the SIAC baseball tournament. Hot and heavy over there. Professor Drew, what do you got?
Looks like Albany State is back with the vengeance as they lead Clark 16-0 after 4. They're bringing out their inner football scores. And in the other game that's going on in the SIAC tournament right now, my Tuskegee Golden Tigers lead the Kentucky State Thoroughbreds 3-2. That game is in the second inning. Quick softball. Benedict defeated Kentucky State 8-0. Spring Hill defeated Savannah State 5-4. Tuskegee defeated Fort Valley 8-0. And Albany State defeated Miles 4-1. So that was the early action in softball.
Yes, fascinating. I told you that Dawson Odom was out at Clark Atlanta University, but you know, as an academic, I'm fascinated with this move here. St. Augustine appoints him, the former NFL standout, that is Dr. Dawson, as he earned his doctorate back in 2019. He was working as we started getting into that pandemic, as he's closing out there, as the Dean of Exercise Science in college athletics. In this role, Dr. Dawson would use his 30 years of experience in college athletics to advance the student experience in exercise science at St. Augustine University. I'm fascinated with this move, what this means. Dr. Dawson previously served as director of athletics at Clark Atlanta University, as we said previously. In this role, he was pivotal in leading $2.4 million athletic facilities enhancements and growing scholarships from 52 to 82, which is significant. And you probably can start seeing that pay dividends in terms of Clark Atlanta athletics moving forward. Quote is saying, Lynn Dawson is a significant addition to St. Augustine University family. We're confident that he will immediately impact our campus and our student experience, end quote. That is St. Augustine University President Dr. Christine Johnson McPhail. While at Clark Atlanta University, Dawson improved student academic performance. Under his leadership, 80% of student athletes had held 3.0 GPA. So a lot of work there. I'm very fascinated to see how he plans to build this academic side as he kind of transitions from athletics to academics in terms of the role of dean of exercise science in college athletics. That's fascinating to see that working out. I've always been intrigued about those kind of relationships and think that there should be more of them. So it'll be fascinating to kind of see how this works out. That'll do it for us today as we close the show. This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Thank all the lab listeners for getting in there. Shouting us, thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I'm Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop, as well as A.D. Drew. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday right here at 6 o'clock. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest news in the lab. A.D. Drew will actually be on assignment in Montgomery as he starts getting it down, but he's going to give us some insights. So we'll sneak him back in here for a special segment next week so he can give you some insights in terms of what's going down in Montgomery for the Black College World Series. And then guess what? We'll hit the road. We'll be down there that weekend, or at least I will be there. Charles will be coming in that weekend. So you'll see me doing the show there Thursday live, and we'll find a way to bring it to you. We might even be at the stadium. We'll figure it out. We'll have some surprises. So look at us next week.
Got a spot already scoped out.
Oh, nice. I know. I told you he's at work.
We already got a spot.
Check us out. We're going to give you some behind-the-scene looks, give you some sounds of the ballpark. We're going to find a way to bring it to you nice and heavy. So stick with us as we start the transition, get into some of these championships as we close the season. Last thing is we got the outdoor track and field championship going on now for the SWAC. So we get some updates. Can Prairie View do what they did, duplicate in terms of the indoor, or will somebody else find a way to climb up that ladder and get a championship in outdoor? You got those all sports trophies going around in all the conferences, so it'll be fascinating to see how things close up because it's tough. Jackson State has done a lot of work early. Can they find a way to get some things done to close it out? Or somebody find a way to rise to the top in terms of also the All Sports Trophy? That'll do it for us. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, DrKenyattaCavil. That's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. DrKenyattaCavil. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Dream big and continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles.
Of course.
Drew.
Lecture.
Dismissed.
We'll holler.
See, you got the 85, 90 champ. Shout out to Alpha 811.